to Between Two Bookshelves. This is our second episode, and we are going over one of my personal favorite books, Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And we're just gonna maybe dive right in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that this book, I'll start it out with who this book is good for. I think it's good for anybody in a leadership position in any capacity, kind of reevaluating how you lead and what motivates your team. Anybody who's wanting to go into business or start a business, matter of fact, I have a business degree in entrepreneurship and management, and I'm super surprised that I did not have to read this book, because I feel like it's so integral to have like this type of mindset like in your memory bank. So I think it's really good for any type of business person or aspiring business person. So
yeah, as kind of like a blanket summary, basically, Tony Hsieh, he's done several things in his life. One of the more notable things was he helped sort of fund and start Zappos.com, which was an e-commerce site that sold shoes online, and it was one of the largest acquisitions that Amazon ever made. So they acquired the company, so they bought Zappos.com from him, and basically he talks about kind of his journey. The book is kind of divided into 3 sections, and I think this is all I'm going to say for the summary because I think it's so like powerful, but pretty much the book is split up into like a profit section. That would be where any business or person is looking to just like make that money up front. So they're trying to make some cash, and this is why I think it's good for like small businesses, all the way to big businesses, is because he talks about profits, getting money, and then he talks about profits and passion, and so enjoying the business, and then he goes further and builds that into purpose. And by the end of the book, he ends up talking a lot about like the psychology of happiness and the psychology of like why people are happy, what makes people happy, who can you impact that's happy. So the book really goes from like a business book to like a hyper happiness book. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I like the most of it, is it kind of shows like how you can have it all. You can have it all. And while I think it's a good business and leadership book, I think it's good for pretty much anybody, as long as they can kind of like wade through some of the business side of it. So maybe if you're not like a business person, or you don't care about capitalism or business or doing anything like that, or, ultimately the book is him finding his passion and purpose, and then how he makes people happy, and how you can make people happy,
Let's dive into our rankings, because I want to say something, but I think it's really applicable to the first ranking that we have, which is readability. And one of the most interesting and fun parts of this book is it's told in a story. Mm-hmm. So it's not just like bullet points that you need to learn. It's very much a storyline and kind of the history of Tony's past, how he came to be, such a big player in the Zappos build-up and growth. And so it's really easy to read. It's kind of chronological and really easy to follow that way. So I think that was an integral part of how easy the book was to consume, was the fact that it was kind of in a storyline. And so that's why I was like really excited, because I ranked this book really high, and so the readability is a 2 for me. I'm not naturally like inclined to read books, and I'm like ashamed to say it because I know how important it is. So this for me was like really, really easy to read, and I actually enjoyed it all the way through.
Yeah, I think he starts the book, he like prefaces it by saying that he wrote this like conversationally.
Yeah.
So, and literally that's how I like do all of my stuff, and I know it drives some people crazy, but everything I send is like pretty conversational. I'm not like hyper big on grammar, so already it just kind of like 10 out of 10 for me, like it's a 2 definitely on readability. Super simple, and just like straightforward. It's just read exactly, and I listened to it once and I read it once. And so if you're listening to it, it's like very smooth.
Yeah.
It just kind of sounds like Tony's just talking to you. Like, you asked him a couple questions and he just like fleshed it out for you.
Yeah.
So
it was really cool listening to him reading his own book, just because it was just so natural, like Attilia was saying, conversational. And so that was kind of a cool aspect that I think that if you like this book and you've read it with us, definitely get the audiobook where he reads it to you, because you kind of hear his rise in voice and things like that, and so it's kind of nice. But so 2 for me.
2 for me.
2 for you. Cool. So up next we have Relevance. How do you think that this book played out on Relevance?
So I was, and this kind of maybe plays into why this is one of my favorite books of all time. I was kind of recommended. I follow several bigger players on business and leadership and a few other things. One of the big guys that recommended this book, his name's Andy Frisella. And he owns just a big supplement company, and he kicks ass. He does a bunch of cool things. But he literally just spelled it out. He was like, if you haven't read Delivering Happiness, that's like one of the integral books. It totally changed everything about his life and his lifestyle, and I super agree. Everything in this book is relevant to everything. Because ultimately, if you look at it, the book just spells out how you can work through some things, find your passion, find your purpose, and then spread that to everybody else. And so it doesn't matter who you are, this book can be super relevant for you. You could be a front desk worker, or you could be, some guy who sweeps the floors somewhere, a janitor or something like that. And this can kind of show you how to impact other people. So whether you're in business or whether you're just kind of like anybody, I think this is a really impactful book. And it kind of spells out how to live your life.
Yeah.
And like kind of low key, like that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's what I think.
So what's your score, 2?
Oh yeah, 2.
Okay.
I woke up this morning and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna give this book a 10 if I don't slow my roll. So I have to I'm trying to be critical for you guys here. This is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, I think for me, Relevance was top notch. But like Attilia was saying, I don't want to rank this book a 10 because that makes it absolutely perfect, and I don't know, maybe it is. But, so this one I gave it a little bit of a knock, and I did 1.5, but which is a really great score still too. I think it's really relevant for everybody, but maybe the catch is getting non-business people to pick the book up, because it's really focused on culture and customer service and happiness within your company. And while that's so true, there's also like golden nuggets, like you were saying, about like life and life value and kind of having that balance. So I think I'm going to do 1.5, just because maybe somebody who doesn't categorize themselves as a businessman or businesswoman wouldn't pick this up off the shelf at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
But that's what I'll go with, 1.5.
I can see that. So I guess then our next factor
is applicability. And I always think I'm going to get tongue-tied when I say that.
So how applicable is this, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, do
I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
So on this one, my kind of rule of thumb is, do you need to have had some type of education related to the book's kind of purpose in order to really apply it to your life is my rule of thumb for that. And I'll start with my score. I scored it a 1.5. Also, just because I think it reflects again on self-categorization of being a business person in order to read the book. But other than that, like, everything's super applicable. Like, some of the tips and tricks that he gave in there, like one of them is to create wow as a verb. And as soon as I read this the first time, like, I changed some of our business automations to say, let's wow the customer, and I incorporated that immediately. And so I think that it's really easy to apply. You don't necessarily have to have any background in business. This can benefit you if you are not in business. But for for not rating the book a 10 across the board. I think I'm going to give it a 1.5. But I think it's really, really easy to apply, and I recommend it to everybody.
In some ways, I think that culture is one of the more abstract things to apply into an organization and into yourself. Like, finding out who you are can be a lifelong journey for some people, you know, and maybe extends past life, you know. I think that this might actually be where I don't give it a 2. And it's because, yes, I do agree with what you're saying. You know, it at some levels, it does speak very highly to being a business person or some type of entrepreneur or some type of organizational leader. So it does speak directly to that type. Not saying that someone else couldn't benefit from it, but I do think that it does take some trial and error. I myself, like, personally have seen culture act in different ways over time, and it's with different people, it's exceedingly hard to apply exactly what you want. And so and especially if, you know, people have different definitions of, like, I think one of the first things he mentions is plur, which is like a rave community. He used to be like a rave person. And so I think it's like peace, love, unity, and something else. Relationships. Or but, you know, some people have different definitions for love. And so, like, if you don't have really good defining pillars in the form of people within your organization, then it's going to be hard to help everyone define what that one culture, like, pillar is. And so, like, while maybe in our culture we have, like, a big defining aspect of continuing education, for example, if maybe me or you or Asa or someone else doesn't, like, stick to continuing education and it isn't the, like, epitome of continuing education, all of a sudden that pillar starts to kind of degrade and not mean as much.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it's kind of hard to apply at a higher level. Like, on the initial levels, it's super easy, right? Just go write down on a piece of paper what you want, and think about it for a little, which has no repercussions, right? If you say something wrong or say something different. And so I'm actually going to rate it a 1, I think, for applicability, just because it is hard on a high level. And in fact, Tony failed at it. Failed at it at Zappos. And later he found his true purpose. But yeah, he literally failed at it, and he explains how he failed at it. And so some of the things he's talking about do exist at kind of like this ideal level. And so it is a little bit, you know, I can see how it's kind of difficult to enact some of this stuff. While it's easy to think about, it's hard to do.
Yeah. Now that you're saying that, I guess mine was a little bit more lower level apply, because I mean, like, when you say things like that, I think of the hiring manager persona. Like, a lot of this has to do with hiring the right people, kind of weeding out, or, you know, shaking out the people to get the gold. Yeah. They do something crazy in this book, which I know we're not supposed to, like, give away, like, too much of it, but where they pay people $2,000 to not continue their hiring process if they're just there for the money. And so I always thought that was really crazy and funny, but
I love that.
I know. I'm like, that's crazy. But I think that it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to apply all of this stuff the next time I go to hire somebody. It's hard because you kind of have to start from the ground up. Like, okay, I want to hire somebody based on our culture. Wait, our culture's flawed. Like, we have to redo everything in order to be able to hire these ideal people. And then kind of go from there. And so that is hard to, because that's like restructuring a business. But you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you did everything perfect the first time, you would have it on lock. But I think that with how business needs to have some level of speed and action, it's not possible to do it perfect the first time. And it's not possible to like, I think one of my favorite quotes is, the only constant is change, and that's literally it. It's like, you find someone, if they're not a good fit, then swap it out. I was listening to another guy, his name's Ezra Firestone, and he was talking about how to find A players. And he was like, it's bullshit. How can you find A players? You don't find A players, you turn people into A players. You turn people into A players. And you do that by giving them everything they need, encouraging them to do the right thing, and then, hire on soft skills. So if someone's not an asshole, then great. Like, that's a good start. And then kind of let the human aspect do its thing. So, it's kind of interesting. It's like, just hire the people, do the good training, give them everything they need, give them some freedom. Like, their IQ jumps 1,000,000 points when you give them freedom.
Yeah.
I've heard that constantly. So I think at some level it's hard to get perfect, but you just keep trying and trying and trying, and eventually it's good, and then you keep trying after that.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's good. So my score, I was a 1.5, and you are 1.
Yeah.
Cool. So up next we have value versus expectation. So how does it hold up to what you think it would be or should have been? I think this one's going to be a little bit hard for us, since it's like, we've read it in the past, we know we like it. So I guess let's try to think back to the first time we interacted with the book.
So this one, and I think the score is super crazy, because it's kind of like an all-encompassing, like, naturalizer, because we're kind of expressing it as like a rate, right? So like the value to expectation ratio. So it's like, it's hard to be 100%. That was so much value.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect anything. So the first time, like I was saying, that I was recommended this book was from that guy, Andrew Frisella. And he was saying that it's the ultimate book, right? He was like, it's one of the only books that you need to take yourself to the next level. And I've heard that before. I've heard that about other books. And I've read other books, and they kind of fall flat, but this one stayed constant. It was surprising. It kind of kept it had its grit to it, and it had unique ideas, like hiring process, had unique ideas and unique storytelling process, which I loved. Overall, I'm just going to rate it 1.5. I think that it delivered the goods, delivered the happiness. So, and then it went further. It went further than I thought it was actually. It went further than where I thought it was actually just going to take you, because it actually goes into like the psychology of happiness and how to deliver that to your customers, but how to deliver that to the people that are around you.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sticking that for my score, 1.5.
So for me, Attilio was the first person who introduced me to this book. We kind of decided, let's do a book review. Let's start a library, which is part of Zappos culture. And this is one of the first books he ordered. And I'd never heard of the book before. Like I said, surprising that they didn't introduce this in business school. Whatever. We'll talk about that later.
There's a couple books that I think they should.
I know. But so I was like, okay, I'll read this. Delivering Happiness. I'm in the customer service kind of niche in our business. And so I was like, I think this is going to be good. I don't really shop at Zappos. I don't really like their interface. And so I don't personally shop at Zappos. And so I'm like, what am I going to learn from this company I don't even really interact with on a normal basis? And so not that I had low expectations, but I thought it was just going to be like another business book about the starting of a company. And so
Even after I hyped it up?
Yeah. Just because everybody now says customer service is our unique selling proposition, or that makes us so special and different, and I think that's bullshit. Not everybody can be great at that to where it makes you stand out, and now everyone's kind of honing in on that and making it less and less special, whereas I think Zappos focuses on their culture, and then their customer service is excellent and exceeds expectation because everyone's so happy to be there. So for me, I'm ranking the value versus expectation a 2 because I did not expect any of it. And like I said earlier, this is one of my favorite books. So 2 out of 2 for that score. I have to say, yeah. Yeah. And then last but not least, my favorite, the butterfly effect. And so this one, just for all of you newcomers, it is how excited does this book make you? Does it make you want to get up and go? Does it give you butterflies in your stomach? And that's where we got the name from.
So when I read this book, I immediately wanted to implement everything. Literally down to the T. To the point where I was like, is it weird that I'm trying to like snag everything? And then I forced myself.
I tried to be Tony Hsieh.
Yeah, I forced myself to find ways that we were different. And I knew that there were some things that are just like globally good, right? Like, I think if you look at like Google's culture statements, one of their culture statements is like, don't be evil, which is like, okay, I think everybody can get behind that, right?
Yeah.
And then some people, I think Gary Vaynerchuk says, customer service, like kind of going back to your point, customer service should be so good and so ingrained in your culture that you shouldn't even have to mention it because it's just there and it's good. So some of the things, I was like rearing and ready to go. The library, I was in. I even wanted to start implementing the hiring process things. There was just so much that I wanted to implement right away. I have to give this criteria too. Literally every bit of it, I was like just excited to do something with. And while I already knew that you should try to make people happy, right? And while I already got joy out of like trying to make people happy, this book really kind of changed my character, I think, for the better, to just like really lead with happiness, almost to the point where it's like detrimental to me, which I think Tony, he was like giving his money. He was giving money like left and right. He was just making things happen, and I definitely sympathize and empathize with that at a certain level, but I think that kind of like helped me see why at the end of the day doing stuff like this is important. So
so lots of butterflies.
But yeah, butterflies. And I think that's why it's one of my favorite books, is because I felt like every bit of it was at some capacity like really applicable.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's why, honestly, maybe why I read. So butterfly effect, good criteria.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So for me, I was really excited. I have the hard copy. I listened to the audio first, and this go around, I read it. And I never noticed this until this morning, and I was so excited when I saw this because I knew we were going to be filming. But on the back of the book, it has top 10 reasons why you should read this book. And then the number one reason, or it goes 10 to 1, is if you ran out of firewood for your fireplace, this book makes as excellent fire starter. And I know they're being like facetious, like, haha, put it in the fireplace and it'll like light up your fire. But I'm interpreting it as like, this will start your fire again. This will give you butterflies and make you excited. And so this book made me excited, and it made me have butterflies, and I think that it kind of got me ready to go. But I am going to give it a 1.5, just because I don't think like I sustained that feeling past like month 1 or 2 of reading it until I reread it again. And so maybe this is something to have like on cycle or something for me. But I'll give it a 1.5 for the butterfly effect.
Okay. So what's our totals at? Oh man, my total's high. It's probably going to be one of the higher rated books I'll ever do.
I did this ahead of time so I wouldn't have to do math on camera, but mine's an 8.5.
Okay. Let me remember my scores too.
What do you think his score will be? We hope that you guys enjoyed reading this book as much as we did. We wanted to get this at the front end of our 12 months of books, just because it was such a great book for us, and we wanted you guys to have it at the beginning of the year to move forward. What's your score?
I agree. So I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, it's an 8.5. I gave one 1 and one 1.5.
I got an 8.5 too.
We'll see. I think it's an 8.5 as our score.
8.5, average 8.5.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't get at least a 9.
I was afraid this morning that I was gonna be a little too fangirly.
Yeah.
So I just kind of thought a little more critically about it. But yeah, I mean, other than maybe applicability, which if you're at a large scale or you're just starting. So like either you have the funds and you can make something happen, really make something happen, or you're just at the beginning of your journey and it's just something to kind of keep as like your mantra, I guess.
Yeah.
Then maybe it's a little more applicable. But
overall, great book, amazing book. Yeah. Really easy read, and I think we both recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, it's one of the books. I have like 4 or 5 books that I just like have on lock for recommendations, and this is just in that top.
Sweet.
But.
Well, that concludes our video for Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. We hope that you guys really enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, we have this in our like day-to-day thoughts and kind of how Hone operates, the marketing company that Attilio has created. But we are so excited that you're here, and we hope that you're staying tuned to all of the videos to come. Our next month's video will be here, and we're really excited about reading it and watching our own review. Anyways, guys, we hope that you have a great rest of your week, and thanks for watching. See ya.